So when we're looking at squat performance here with Chris, I think probably one of the first places we need to clear up what can be potentially a confusing issue is the difference between what I like to refer to as a remedial squat versus a performance squat. Remedial is my world, performance is this guy's world. Remedial for me, oftentimes we will see an individual that has a problem with loss of lumbar lordosis here with their squat pattern, whether it's getting up and down out of a chair or lifting the groceries or picking up their child or squatting heavy weight. They will get, for lack of a better word, stupid about how to control this particular area. There is some research that suggests that we lose the ability temporarily to really discern exactly what's going on with that pelvic tilt here. If a person can't accurately feel where the backside of that joint is and they start going under bar or trying to lift heavy weight, then they are in a very nasty, risky position there. We want to try to, in my world, give them a sense of where that training wheel is on the back side of the joint by shoving them all the way back there and playing there for a while. Now, if you stay there for too long, emerging research right now from Philipp's group in Colorado suggests that you may wind up having some problems with your hip. And indeed, we see that in a lot of lifters that go heavy. If they're really here for a long time, those hips can start to play out. You may also wind up having some problems with the spondylolisthesis in your back, or the facets can start to bug you a bit. So what we want to do is move off of that remedial squat after you've got good control and awareness of this area, and then we start moving into this guy's domain and playing with that performance-oriented squat. What we like to do with that is to imagine this entire area as a big cylinder. Think of it almost, I imagine, like a culvert, one of those big cement things under the road, you know, that you see in the construction sites. This whole area becomes a big cylinder here that you want to try to pressurize. Think about that cylinder being pressurized by a piston that comes down into it. Now, Chris is going to talk a little bit in a moment about how he cues squatters to be able to do that in the gym. But a couple of ways to try to get that. We don't want the ribs up here like this, because then the diaphragm, that part of that pressurization system, is up here at this point and the pelvic floor is down here like this. We want to bring them into opposition with each other. One way to do that is borrowing from the Prague school, one of the early founders, Carl Levitt, and doing something, we're going to riff on the Levitt abdominal bracing strategy in a standing position now. So to do that, I'm going to have Chris to give a bit of an example here. He's going to forcefully blow air out as if he's blowing through a soda straw. And as he blows out, he can feel the ribs right here. If you put your hands right here, now keep breathing. Put your fingers right here on the ribs, and your thumb on the ribs, and your fingers down here. Now as you fully blow out, keep blowing out, keep blowing out, keep blowing out, and you'll feel the oblique area in here get tight. Now breathe past that down into the bottom of the pelvic floor. And now let's work on pressurizing that. That gets you in a position where you can actually do that pressurization. And sometimes I'll go in and do a little bit of abdominal raking in here to kind of cue those muscles that we want to work. Another way that we can cue it is to kind of punch a guy here and say, okay, that's soft. Make that. Push me out of here, push me out of here, good. Push me out of here, push me out of here, excellent. Now, let's look at how Chris is going to do that for a lifter when they go under the bar.
So again, we're after the same thing here. And one of the things I always challenge my lifters to do is after we do the bracing strategies is to actually have them go back into extension here and do the bracing strategy again, and they'll automatically realize that they cannot pressurize to the same level. So again, I use that same cylinder concept, but I also say, think about it connected right here to the front of the rib cage. And we want to pull and draw that down. So as you see, if I'm here and I do that, I'm pulling, it's drawing my rib cage actually into place. So I end up in the same position that Snell is talking about. And got the tightness here, I'll cue right here, push out on the obliques, and again, pressurize deep and down here pushing out, pushing that cylinder down. So that's how we get that locked in. Once we do that, again, we can go back and try to pressurize in this position, and you'll find that you're unable to do it. And that ties back into the difference between, again, the remedial pattern and the performance pattern. Remember, in a performance pattern, you're at or near at maximal loads. So it needs to be in perfect position, otherwise you will end up failing. So when you're in that remedial pattern, you're not loaded to the max that your body can handle.
Okay, so before you actually put someone under the bar, you're working on this bracing strategy and making sure they've got good awareness of how to put that in place, correct?
That is step one.
And then we have to figure out how they're going to, how do we teach them that hip hinge? Now, those of you on Fix Your Own Back, that was job one, right? That was chapter one. You've already been there and you've already checked that out. Remember, that was remedial. You're working on sticking your tail out in that realm and working around the hip. Here, we're still working around the hip, but we're coming off of that extreme end range of extension there. So how do you guys cue that pattern of moving that stable lumbar spine over the top of that mobile hip?
So the next step for us is how we're connected to the floor. So what I have our lifters do is we get into our stance, and we think about, you know, our foot is being a hand, and we've got most of the pressure in this area. What we want to do is, I tell the lifters to grab the ground. The majority of your weight's going to be on your heel, but you're still going to grip the ground and then twist it up, twist it up. So when we brace, we grab the ground, we twist it up. Once we've got the bar on the back, I also have my lifters, I say, tell your body you're going to squat. So as you're doing this, you're going to feel the glutes contracting as you're twisting that floor up. But think further. Try to twist, pinch a penny, flex your quads like you're on a bodybuilder stage, and then here, you're standing firm, you're standing strong, and you're ready to move into the squat pattern now.
So there's in terms of this rooting pattern that we're talking about with the feet, there are some common over cues that sometimes people make mistakes on that can lead to potential injury when we start adding major weight to things. Talk about those a little bit for me, Chris.
I see this quite a bit in the strength training and powerlifting world because there's a lot of focus on knees out, which if you're doing this correctly, the knees are going to track in the right position. But focusing on that as a cue can do the wrong thing. So I spend a lot of time just talking about that rooting and the twisting of the floor, because if not, you end up seeing a lot of people doing this to try to achieve a knee position. Or they're in here and over-cueing the knee, and they're out here like this, if you can see that. So again, this is not what we're looking for. So if we're focused on getting this, boom, and we twist that floor up, as you move into your squat pattern, the knees are going to automatically stay in the right position.
And what I'm seeing from this angle as Chris goes down is about a 45-degree angle, and that hip, knee, and foot and ankle are all pointed in the same plane. Now, just for grins, show me crappy form on that. Show me that rolling up, and let's see what that looks like. And you see how he's rolling up on the inside of the foot is popping up there? That's what you do not want. If you're only loading 2 of the 3 points of that tripod and you're under the bar, you're going to be in a world of hurt somewhere. And how about another lousy cue there? Maybe the foot pointing forward and the knee going outside of it. Now, even though he's flat, his foot's pointing over here, but his knee's pointing way back here. That's not a good linkage in that chain of kinetic activity, and that's going to make him a little more vulnerable to an injury.
Definitely. On that first one with the rollout, my glutes weren't engaged. Even with my body weight there, I felt at risk in my adductors. It's not set up. The muscles supporting the hip are not in the right position and not firing correctly.
Very, very good cues there, and common misconceptions as we try to make sure that people don't do the other thing of falling in here, which in my world, in the clinic, we see probably a lot more of that than overcorrection in the other way. So those cues will help to get you rooted into the floor so that you're anchored and ready to put this braced abdomen under the bar, and then we got to go somewhere else to start achieving a little better stabilization too. Where's that, Chris?
To the lats. We want to now tie this all the way up into the bar stabilize this entire upper body.
Okay.
I started to going to grab him already because this is, I'm ready to
but he
cueing.
Couldn't find my lat.
So.
All right, so let's see how that's going to look here.
So I'm going to have the lifter come up to the bar, grip the bar. They're going to walk under it, find a good position, and get their stance set up. And right here, I'm going to work with them to before even unracking the bar, is locking all of this in, just as we've talked about. So we're going to lock that in, stand strong, twist the floor apart. Again, we've got the bracing the entire time. And then my step from here is going to be to engage that lat. So I'm going to take my elbow. My elbow has to be in the down position, not behind, in this position right here. And I'm going to draw it into my body. You could think about a pull down even, or a pull up, something in that motion. We often cue it as bend the bar. So you're going to take the ends of that bar and you're going to draw them to the floor. Bend the bar. Can't do that if you're in this position.
Okay, so that gives us the lats. And why are the lats important in this particular lift to stabilization of the lumbar spine?
So the lats are tied in here as well. I mean, just think about it. I think about it from a basic aspect of, I've got the bar here and I've got a nice stabilized core down here. I want to tie the two together. But even without the bar on our back, the lats are an upper body stabilizer.
And what we focus on in the clinic, if you'll turn around for me, Chris, I'll oftentimes point to an anatomy map or something on the wall, and we'll look at the anatomy of the lats, and you see those lats fanning out here and coming down and attaching to the lumbodorsal fascia here. The glute on the opposite side comes up and attaches to the same area. And when you activate the lats and the glutes together, you get this big X of a back brace across your back to help to support you when you're lifting. So you want to try to get the lats going with the way that Chris was just cueing with the bend the bar, and you want to get the glutes going with the way that we were talking about rooting into the floor and spinning or twisting out with the foot there while you're well grounded. Okay? Anything else to add on that?
It's important to continue to have the lifter focus on the lats through the lift. So if we're twisting the ground and we're going through the squat pattern, all those are active, but this is static and the lats have to remain static. So you've got to think about that, and that can take a little bit of practice.
Another area from the DNS school of thought that we sometimes run afoul of, oftentimes run afoul of when we see lifters pushing big weight, is the idea of where that neck's going to be. And the DNS camp, if you're hyperextended here, then you're going to wind up being weaker overall. So how do you guys focus on working with the neck in the lift while you're squatting?
We keep the neck aligned with the rest of the spine in this neutral position. So basically, whatever your standing neutral position is. A lot of lifters, if I see that they're reaching, I'll cue them to pull their chin back in or push their head back. It's really common to see a lot of lifters due to coaching that happens in our field with a head up, and so we'll have to recorrect that. On occasion, you will have the lifter also looking at the ground. So there's, on both ends of that spectrum, you're just trying to push back to where you maintain this, and I'm going to do it squat again. Neutral spine, the entire squat. Boom. So we think about a point on the horizon. So sometimes I will pick a physical point for the lifter to keep an eye on, so that will help here, and then you've just got to focus on the proper chin position.
Excellent. Okay, so there's a bit about the squat. What's our next lift?
Next lift is the bench press.
See you there.